How do you color text? How do you make great animations in HTML? How was style introduced? What are its basics? How it relates to SCSS? We are going to answer all of these questions and lot more in today's video. So let's get started with our video right now. Today we are going to go to that time when HTML was introduced. We were able to create HTML pages and share across multiple places and with multiple people. But after that, what was left? You can send paragraphs and sections and different other things. But what if you wanted to make a text bold or a text italic? If you think about it, let's consider you are in the position where you are going to create these items. To make a text bold, you can write angular brackets B and then write some text inside it, as we were writing something with paragraph. Same for italics, you can write angular bracket I. But what if we want to make text in red color? Obviously you can think that we can write color equals to red. But what if we want to make text larger? Then again you have to create a new tag. Now think about it, it's crazy. We have so many ways to style a text. We can have background color text or some foreground color text, and then we can make size larger, smaller. There are so many things. So a single property named as style was introduced, and that's what we are going to start our journey with. Style is an attribute to any presentable HTML element. With that attribute, you can write in a string with semicolon separated things. You can write multiple properties which you want to assign to a tag. But what if you have multiple paragraphs and you want to assign same kind of styling to all those paragraphs? It becomes quite tiresome. For that, another way was or must have been introduced. These are all in my mind, by the way. Whatever styles you were writing was present with the element. That is called inline styling. Along with that, a style was introduced in head tag, where with an angular bracket style, you can define all the style for that HTML document. So if you have multiple paragraphs, creating one style for paragraph will be applied on all the paragraphs below. We are introducing something called as identifier. So we are identifying all the paragraphs with a single style. But what if you have two different kind of paragraphs? One should be in red, another should be in black. What to do then? For that case, you need to uniquely identify an element, and there is a way in HTML to uniquely identify any element. HTML elements can also be uniquely identified by something called as ID. It's also an attribute. You know that, right? Like style was an attribute, ID is an attribute. And whenever you write something in that ID, you can identify that element in CSS using the hashtag symbol. Same hashtag symbol as we use in our Instagram post. By the way, these IDs or these items which we are identifying elements are called selectors, or you can think that these are identifiers. Before going forward, we need to understand that all these stylings are called cascaded style sheets. Why cascaded style sheets? Let's go into that. Imagine that you have added a style for a div element. Now whatever child you write, to consider you have written a paragraph inside div. The style which you added for div will be cascaded down to its child or will be passed down to its child automatically. So if you have made the text red for div, all the child inside it will also become red. But this also brings a problem. You can think, if you add some style for parent, then everything on child will be colored. Obviously, you can override that with writing specific style for child element. So you can write a selector like this to specifically apply style for a child which is inside a parent and which can override the effect of parent. So for that, if you write div space p, then the paragraphs which are outside div will have a different style. Paragraphs inside div will have different style. Writing spaces doesn't mean that child will be directly inside parent. It can be somewhere inside that parent. So if you have div inside that, another div inside that, another div, and then paragraph, even if you write div space p, styling will be applied on all the divs and then inside paragraph also. As you might have done this with creating PowerPoint presentations or some kind of other things which you have worked in your life. There are templates for things. There are templates for CSS. There are things like Bootstrap. If you kind of include that CSS in your HTML, your page will become beautiful. If you write your div, p and elements, it will automatically apply these styles into it. But there is a catch. These templates are a big CSS file. You need to copy all content of it, paste it in your HTML and then work with it. It is tiresome again, right? So there is a way where it can be avoided. Again, in head you have something called as link. Using link and this command, you can insert any CSS into your HTML. By the way, I have talked a lot about CSS, but one of the most important thing which I think was introduced for CSS was classes. Now what are classes? Classes are kind of identifier. But unlike ID, classes are quite flexible. A single class can be applied to multiple elements. Also, a single element can contain multiple classes. Same way we were writing ID, you have to write class equals to, and in inverted commas you have to write class name. If you want to apply multiple classes to a single element, then you can write classes with space separated in between them. With multiple combinations, you can generate a lot of different styles using very less amount of CSS. Now consider this. You have just a paragraph, no CSS, no ID, nothing like that, okay? And then you have written paragraph definition in CSS 2 times. Which one should it apply? You can imagine in this way. All the CSS which you applied for paragraph are combined into one and then used. If you written font size 2 times, then the lower one, the one you declared after, will be taken as a final one for paragraph. This is called precedence. You have to think which CSS will be applied at the end. The one which you wrote inside element with style attribute, remember we started with that? That is the highest precedence one. Then comes which you have something you have written in head. Then comes which you have imported from other files. And also, if you have imported something from different files, the one which is at lowest, which you have declared at the end, is taking highest precedence. In Angular, we have something called as angular.json. In angular.json, we can find that there is something called as styles defined in that. If you are using some template, you should write it on top. You are writing your own CSS where you have overridden those styles, you should write it below. Same way we were importing in there. Now, as you can see, these are not CSS, these are SCSS. So what is SCSS? SCSS is syntactically awesome CSS or style sheets. Syntactically awesome? What does that mean? With CSS, if you think about it, what I told before, if you have a paragraph which is inside a div, in that case, you would have to write div space paragraph. It's quite different from what you were writing in HTML. You had div and then paragraph inside it. But in here, in CSS, you have div then space paragraph. Instead of that, using SCSS, you can have same hierarchical representation. Obviously, SCSS also supports normal CSS if you write inside it, but if you can write something like div, bracket, and then paragraph inside. It's quite easy and quite simple. There are many things which make SCSS also great. It is basically CSS on steroids. You can even have variables, functions, and lot different things in SCSS. But to start with, just write normal CSS in that and think about it. You can write hierarchy with that SCSS file. By the way, how do you start working with CSS? You can go to your computer, right click on any element you want to change through CSS in website, in Chrome, then press inspect. In that, you will be greeted with a side screen. On the side screen, you can see that there are some CSS applied there. You can go ahead and change the values there. As soon as you change it, it will be reflected on Chrome. You don't even need to write your own CSS to understand it. You can go there and start playing it. So I hope this introduction to CSS was useful to you. And if it was, please consider subscribing to this channel and liking this video. I'll talk to you again. Thank you for visiting me. Have a nice day. Have a nice week. Bye bye.